Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with another edition of our weekly podcast, Real Estate TidBits. I hope everyone's doing great today. We've got, for Florida, unusual weather, a nice fall day. There's a little chill in the air, very pleasant. Great for doing outdoor activities, walking, running, taking the family out, whatever the case may be. We don't get a lot of days like this, so take advantage of it. If you listen to my most recent podcast, you heard me subtly complaining about a few of the items that we deal with in Florida, and the one that I was personally chatting about was insurance, specifically homeowners insurance, and how the rates are so erratic, how it's a challenge to get a solid insurance policy for an affordable rate. And lastly, how the state of Florida and our government representatives from the governor on the way down, all the way down to the lower level positions, have really done a horrible job in protecting and representing the residents of Florida. The reason I'm bringing it up again today, interestingly, as I mentioned in my last podcast, I switched companies because farmers who I was using had decided to pull out of Florida and had given me a notice of cancellation effective the end of October. But they had, in some fashion, affiliated themselves with a company called Slide. I did not go with Slide. I went with another carrier. But the reason that I mention it is I had done some research on Slide online, and let's just say it was not the most flattering. But anyway, I got a policy offer from Slide in the mail, so it was a fully printed out homeowners insurance policy with the coverage and the premium, etc. Now, if you remember, I had mentioned that my last premium with Farmers was $2,450 approximately. It was under $2,500. And the new insurance that I got with another carrier was just under $3,900. So I was paying about $1,400 more, which was a pretty significant increase. Believe it or not, the offer that I received from Slide was for $6,500. I have to say that a second time, $6,500. So Farmers canceled me, kind of affiliated in some fashion as a referring company with Slide, and for the same insurance that I had with Farmers, it went up over $4,000. Is that ridiculous or not? I was just flabbergasted when I got that information. And to say I was steamed would be an understatement. Fortunately, I found obviously much better alternatives than that and went with one of the other alternatives. But I fired off a letter to my farmer's agent, who's local. I won't share her name on this podcast. But I told her about this information and the premium increase that Slide wanted to offer me, and let her know in professional but no uncertain terms that I would never, ever refer any business to Farmers for any of the other lines of insurance that they offered. It's really just mind-boggling how this industry is acting in Florida, and that our representatives in Florida are simply not representing them. You know, everybody has their own opinion about politics, and they have their own viewpoints about more social issues, the economy, inflation, abortion, civil rights, and the like. But I think everybody is affected equally by insurance because everybody needs insurance, whether it's auto insurance, homeowners insurance, disability insurance. life insurance. There's a lot of different insurances, and they do take a chunk of everybody's money. But I think it can be universally agreed that Florida is one of the worst states in the country for how they've handled homeowners insurance. And we can lay this strictly at two industries: obviously the insurance industry, and secondly, our elected officials. Unfortunately, Florida, and I've lived here a number of years, I'm a transplant from the D.C. area, but I've lived in Florida for longer than I lived in D.C. And I can say unequivocally that big companies control Florida and pretty much control our politicians. Corporations, unfortunately, have an undue influence in general in politics, but Florida, in my opinion, is one of the worst states in the country for this, because the consumers seem to get the short end of the stick. The average wage in Florida is not very good. We have a lot of service workers. Our economy is too one-sided. Tourism is great, and we all love it. It helps fund Orlando. But the wages that are paid in that industry, it's hard for people to really buy real estate and some of the other things that most families would like to have to not only improve their quality of life, but to provide a better support system for their family and children. And I guess I ran over this because when you watch political ads, they're so full of hot air. And when you study the records of the people that we're electing, they're just not protecting Floridians. But yet they keep getting elected. It's just frustrating to me. And, you know, I'm a citizen, but I'm in the real estate business. And not only is real estate important to me, obviously, but it's important to most people that are residents here. And besides the tourism industry, it's probably the single biggest generator of revenue for our economy and through our tax system, through property taxes, through people paying state stamps on the deed when a property is bought and sold. These things are tremendous revenue generators. And then when you factor in all the people that get their real estate licenses, have to pay licensing fees, they pay these companies that offer pre-licensing courses, review courses, to get additional designations in real estate. It's a big industry. And homeowners insurance has a significant impact on it. I just want people to really hear what I'm saying and try to be more proactive in not only demanding and expecting more from our elected officials on a local level, but also, if they're not doing their jobs, look for alternatives. You know, people get all fired up about the presidential elections, and I understand that. But the presidential elections have little impact on the state of Florida. So just keep that in mind. Also, I'll jump ahead here to sports. The finals of the both American League and National League playoffs to determine who will be the World Series representatives are in full swing. The Cleveland Guardians came from behind in dramatic fashion yesterday and beat the New York Yankees. So the Yankees are ahead 2-1 in their series. And the Los Angeles Dodgers trounced the New York Mets last night. So they're ahead in their series 3-1. So we're getting closer to a conclusion to the finals of the American League and National League playoffs that will ultimately choose the World Series representatives. So that's the only thing I'll mention about sports today. On a real estate note, things are still going along at what I would consider a consistent rate. Prices have stayed pretty flat in 2024 in most of the communities we're dealing with. Inventory has always been below average this year, but you're starting to see a little increase in prices. It's become a little bit more important now that when a property comes on the market, that the seller and the realtor really try to price it at the proper price. Pricing has always been at the forefront of a house selling promptly and for a great price, but as the market flattens out, pricing becomes even more of an important criteria, along with how the house is presented. Staging is very important in a house. And last but not least is providing good accessibility to the property. I'm starting to see offers come in now, and some buyers are a little bit unrealistic from the opposite side of the spectrum. So we've started to get some offers a little bit lower than houses are worth. And ultimately, one of two results happens. Either you have to, in the course of negotiations, get the buyers to improve their offer and get a meeting of the minds with buyers and sellers so that you can put together a transaction. Or for the buyers that are a little bit unrealistic on what a property is worth, basically they're making offers, but the offers are not moving forward. So it's so important that people are knowledgeable, well advised by their agent, and at the same time have a sense of reality. I always try to inform my customers that besides being educated on the process and the values, they also need to try to put themselves in the shoes of the other side. Because what makes a successful, smooth, and timely transaction is when both buyers and sellers think they're getting a fair result. And when one side tries to overpower the other side, either by making an unrealistic offer or in their minds thinking they're going to take advantage of the other side, that ultimately is not a recipe for success. So my advice is try to look at the entire picture, because I can tell you, if you wait until next year to buy, the prices are absolutely going to go up, and there's going to be a lot more competition for properties, and buyers are going to lose out frequently when they get into multiple offer situations. So you hear me talk about this on a consistent basis, but it's really true, and so I can't really say it enough. The new policy changes that we've had in real estate that you've heard me talk about in the past few months, they seem to be working out a little better now. I think that now that people have been utilizing the new paperwork and the new concepts over the last 10 weeks, there seems to be a little bit more understanding, especially by the real estate community, and explaining it to their customers. And so hopefully these new concepts will be increasingly accepted and we won't have to change things again. As I've mentioned before, I'm still a little nervous about more changes happening because the Justice Department still has not signed off on the proposal that the National Association of Realtors gave the plaintiffs in the litigation. So the Justice Department could still require additional procedures, penalties, or protocol, and those things could necessitate additional changes on how we practice real estate in Florida. But anyway, at this point, we don't know that. It's kind of a laborious, slower process, so all we can do is wait. Last but not least, all the elections are getting rapidly upon us. As always, the elections are the first Tuesday of November. I hope everybody votes. Early voting starts in most of the early voting outlets October 21st and goes through, I think, there's a deadline prior to the election date, which I'm not 100% sure, but October 21st is the starting date. And I always recommend to people when they have the time, they either do the mail-in ballots or early voting so that they can avoid the longer lines on the day of the election. And read up on who's running. There's a lot of amendments, and when you watch the ads on the television, they certainly sound like different amendments, because you'll hear an amendment about one thing and you'll hear opposing viewpoints which don't even seem to be talking about the same amendment many times. But they're important amendments, so vote on these. Try to do some research on them. I try to tell people not to skip them. I know people that'll just vote for the president and maybe the governor because those are the issues they're familiar with. But the amendments and the local elections are actually more important to our daily lives. So that's it for today. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your family. Enjoy the nice weather. Marty Kaiser out.